The following translation of Princess Jahanara's Risalah-i Sahabiyya by Mullah Shah was commissioned by the Mount San Antonio Philosophy Group. To his great credit, Mullah Shah finished doing a rough translation from the Urdu edition of Jahanara Begum's original Persian text in a very short time. We have subsequently rendered his more literal translation into prose that we felt was more accessible to the general reader. However, I think it is important to underline a note of caution here, since Jahanara's original Persian is mutilated to some measure when taken out of its native language and context. Nevertheless, my hope is that this small book will spark a deeper interest in the spiritual life of Jahanara and her tutelage under Mullah Shah. It is my earnest desire that a new translation, directly from the Persian manuscript, be done and then published with both versions side by side. Jahanara Begum's life and work are worthy of a deeper and more systematic study. Although she is mostly known as the daughter of Shah Jahan and the sister of Dara Shikoh, she is a remarkable person in her own right and deserves more scholarly attention than has been shown in the past. 1. All praises and adoration to Allah, who is alone within self without any partner. There is no resemblance with Allah, there is not even any possibility of it. Unlimited salutations and blessings of Allah bestow on that dear lover, who is rightly prophet of Allah, and in his religion, there is no chance of any doubt. Unlimited salutations and blessings of Allah bestow on the family of the Prophet and his companions. 2. Each of them had the fear and respect of Allah, and they all were the strength and carrier of the Prophet's religion. They had done nothing else than in following the footstep of the Prophet. This is love. To fly toward a secret sky, to cause 100 veils to fall each moment. First to let go of life. Finally, to take a step without feet. Rumi. 3. This booklet is written by the beggar, slave, and disciple of Hazrat Mullah Shah. Jahanara, daughter of King Shah Jahan. Hazrat Mullah Shah is the master and guidance of this old-aged woman. This booklet consists of short stories that are of value to write them down. Having accepted the refuge of my master, in the quest and closeness of Allah, I have named this small book, Risalah-i Sahabiyya. 4. Although words are not enough, and pen does not have the strength to write about my master, years are required to write a single word about him. My tongue does not have the courage on how I should write about that person, who is perfect with his characteristics and qualities. Many centuries would be taken to write about him. I only dare to write after seeing his approach in both worlds. 5. The only aim of writing about my personal life, so that I can be listed in those companions of my master, who would be recognized with the name of my master on the day of judgment. Because I am drenched with sins and I have wasted my life in futile things. So, being listed among those companions, it may be that I would be saved with the blessings of my master. I am following the sunnah of Mashiach to write an autobiography. 6. Otherwise, I am not worthy, as well as incapable to pull out a drop from the river of the miracle of my master. How is it possible to pluck a fruit from the orchard of that righteous master, who has unlimited lessons and the best of habits? I hope that I may write about the various events that I faced with precision. This work can only be finished with the help of Allah, and I am believing in him. 7. An introduction to Mullah Shah. You should know that this saint has a unique and different place in the wisdom of Tawheed. Oneness of Allah. He is in the highest rank of spirituality, free from the social norms and this illusionary world. He knows the hidden treasure of the world, and the secrets of the Quran. He is the sea of the Shariat, Islamic law, and Tariqah, observance or the spiritual way, and how it is pursued. 8. This is our Sheikh and Imam, Hazrat Mullah Shah, and his birthplace is the village of Araksa, in the Rostak area of Badakhshan. His father's name is Maulana Abidi, son of the Maulana Sultan Ali, son of Hazrat Qazi Fatih. Among his ancestors, one had also the title of the Qazi, judge, but their only desire and aim was to find the right path. They accepted all as the will of Allah. 9. They always accepted whatever troubles arose as their own, which had been sent by Allah. Having known this truth, they were keeping in the remembrance of Allah. They were free from the comfort of the mortal world. They consider the pain and pleasure as a lover, with which to spend the rest of their life in a better way. My master's mother was Hazrat Bibi Khatun. She was known as the Rabia and Khadija at that time. 10. She was very pious, and reached the highest point of the Marfat, divine union. She died after reaching a long age. My master has 2 brothers and 1 sister, who is 1 year younger than the master, and she is still alive. Everyone is peacefully in their own city. The name of the brothers is Beg Muhammad and Mullah Sultan Ali. They have come to India with an intention to serve the master. 11. Having received unlimited wisdom and knowledge, they have started to do meditation. After taking their full part of knowledge, they have returned on the order of the master. Master has also taught his sister about the divine knowledge, and she is truly and rightly a disciple of the master, who can speak intimately of the divine. She is also a source of that divine knowledge of master, and how he has blessed his followers. 12. Mullah Shah's devout followers have reached the pinnacle of divine knowledge. A lot of people of this country have helped to compile a book on the master's inspired knowledge, wisdom, spirituality, mysticism, Tawheed, oneness, tariqat, observance, reality and ways of the Marfat, how to unite with the divine. It helps a lot of people to reach the divine. 13. Master has also written wonderful ghazals and qasidas in his Farsi Balaig book. His every verse is full of light and wisdom. The first line of every verse leads to the path, Baitul Ma'mur, 7th heaven. This old woman considers herself with devotion and honesty to be a disciple of Hazrat Mullah Shah to the highest rank among his devotees, and my master has also bestowed on me this privileged status. 14. Master's book is with me day and night and always in my sight, and it is on my tongue as well. Its verses are quenching like water, reality-based and with the divine impact of sacred union. After reading, it enhances my knowledge and provides me with other advantages. I believe that at that time no one has explained the Tawheed, the oneness of Allah, as my Shah Sahab did, and no one has the ability to replicate the same. 15. More about my master. From childhood to 21 years of age, my master lived in village of Araksa in the Rostak area of Badakhshan. In that time my master had high moral habits and displayed a miraculous character. Citizens of that area also gained knowledge, as devotees from the Hazrat Pir Dastaja and my own master. After that, they moved to Bork in order to print some written books, which could provide key details. 16. The detachment of the master from that area led to pain and misery for those citizens in his area. My master could not stay in Bork, and he moved to India as a sign from heaven. First, he lighted up the area of Kashmir with his blessings. He was 25 years old at that time. He studied there as a student for 3 years. After that, the spiritual pull and power of the divine started to the ascendant. 17. Till now, he had paid no allegiance to any master, so that he was earnest in finding a master to guide him in the mystic path. He moved to Lahore, and at that time Lahore was known for the Sufi sage, Hazrat Mian Mir. My master visited his place after knowing about him. Having seen the curiosity of my master, Mian Mir did not talk to him and even did not allow him, my master, to sit with him. The only reason was to test his sincerity. 18. In the quest of love, seek union and to know yourself. It usually happened that my master fasted, and he kept busy in himself to know the inner secret. While diligently studying, my master did not leave there. When 1 year passed with these conditions, then Mian Mir understood my master and his desires after seeing his strong belief and faith. At that moment, Mian Mir considered him his devotee. 19. Mian Mir gave my master, Mullah Shah, whatever was in his heart. My master started to do meditation, and he quickly reached a higher rank, and became aware of different types of knowledge, like a divine one, because Mian Mir's abilities were perfect. My master lived there for 19 years. In the winter, he lived there to serve Mian Mir Sahib. At that time, my master was doing very long and intense meditation. 20. He was also very self-restrained in the observance of himself. One of my best and deepest recollections of my master is that in these 19 years, and prior to these years, and after the death of Mian Mir Sahib, he had never slept. While lying on the floor, he does not sleep, and even he does not yawn or take a nap for a moment. He also stated, "Keep awake, sleep is the enemy of those who spiritually hear." 21. My master has left every comfort of this mortal world, after purifying his heart with the love of the divine. Due to the impact of meditation, and the perfection in Tawheed, oneness of Allah, he has come closer to Allah to that extent which cannot be ceased. He has reached the state of Malakut, state of Jabrut, and state of Lahut. Every curtain has been unveiled, and he has reached the aim of Marfat, divine union. 22. He often states that the opening of the gate of Allah was not possible without guidance from the Master, who was blessed by Allah. How can I praise the existence of my Master? Whatever I can write or can utter with my tongue is not sufficient to describe my blessed and perfect Master. It should be noted that he does not order his companions and relatives to do meditation with the same assiduousness as himself. 23. My master sometimes enjoins the night for meditation, and he says that we have to do meditation for the sake of our relatives. Having reached the highest state of Tawheed and meditation, Master is the illuminating leader of those people who are in search of divine union. The purpose of his poems is to guide us about the Tawheed and higher states to reach the divine. Most of his conversation is about the Marfat. 24. Due to his quest for love, closeness of Allah, and the perfection in Tawheed, Mullah Shah has been given a title from the divine world as Azim Sani, Great Illuminator. 2 lines of his verse justify it. If the existence and character of any person manifest on his face, then the house of knowledge in his heart would be inhabited, and Bayazid is the beggar of this. His dignity is very high, congratulations to him. 25. Whenever a human is attached to his body, till then he is not human. When he comes to know the knowledge of heart, then he would be a human. When he has detached himself from the body, then he comes into the heart of knowledge. When that Azim Sani says, then his words, they would be Allah's words. Allah has blessed my Shah Sahib's effectiveness in his companionship that even any callous person's heart becomes softer. 26. Mullah Shah's kindness brings friendship to the heart. Having gotten the privilege to see my master's way of treating and illuminating the minds of devotees, people's curiosity of the divine started to increase. The Shia and Sunni sects are rivals of each other, but my master's poem has shown them the right path and considered Al-Sunnat Jamaat as a true sect. 27. A lot of people from the Shia sect become Sunni and they have reached a high level of spirituality. Because of my master's teaching, many non-Muslims have converted to Islam. Allah has bestowed my master with that soul, that whenever a companion comes for the first time to get the Zikr-e-Ilahi, remembering Allah from the inner heart with words and sound, he reaches a supreme, exalted level. 28. On that spiritual plane, he can see the gathering of the Prophet Muhammad, 4 friends, Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq, Hazrat Umar Farooq, Hazrat Usman, and Hazrat Ali, companions of the Prophet and different saints, who are blessed to be there in the gatherings. Without any doubt, He sees this blessed gathering, and he talks to Prophet Muhammad to let him know about his grievance. 29. He also hears the answer of that grievance. In this way, he can talk to anyone in that gathering to whom he wants to talk. Most of the disciples, on the first occasion, already unveil the state of Malakut, and they have reached the state of Olim-e-Bala Ka, the supernal, the gathering of angels and Prophet Muhammad. This state is also known as Jabarut. 30. But it is a different perception to understanding the existence of Allah for his lover. So, in that sense the lover thinks that in this world there are two existences. One is of he, and the other is Allah. This concept is also known as Wahdat al-Wujud. Allah is all. He and his creatures are not the same, but share an unfathomable intimacy. This is similar to a certain non-dualist concept of the Buddha. 31. They observe everything which exists there. After entering in silsila, a chain or religious order or spiritual genealogy, where one Sufi master transfers his caliphate to his spiritual descendant. This chain starts from the devotee to his master and goes on to reach Prophet Muhammad. Few become indulged with the ecstasy of the oneness of Allah to such an extent that they do not care about other things. 32. Slowly and gradually this intensity and state of affairs decrease. In the quest of Allah, Allah has given the strength to my master that he is always used to say that I have found Allah. He loudly states that if any person has the devotion and desire to meet Allah, he can help him to reach it there. He has also written in a rubaiyat about it. A few of them are written here as a sacrament. 33. A person who has lied, he has committed sin. I am telling the truth, Allah is going to be witnessed on him. Although Mullah Shah has found the way of Allah. Therefore, doors are also opened for the pious companion of Mullah Shah. 34. I have struggled for 20 years to get access to his, Allah's, manifestly sweet scent. Then I come to know that we are in the search of our own true selves. This feeling led me to know that I was that very being himself, Allah. 35. I was seeking the beautiful and enraptured lover, so that I could be beyond ecstasy with his red lips. Suddenly, I peered in myself, and I found him to devolve in my very chest. 36. Tawheed makes me the knower of the secrets, and you have made me sit on the high level of respect and honor. You have bestowed the character of being rich without having enough. Be happy that you have made the independent without any want. 37. If your heart tends toward the Marfat, then your heart knows about the character of Marfat. Oh, hungry man, what are you going to eat on the tablecloth of beggars? Sweet and delicious bite is in front of the Shah. 38. If a person truly desires for the Daulat-e finally he will find out a way. What is meant by Daulat-e? It is eternal fortune, which is Marfat Ilahi, divine union with Allah. This wealth, Daulat, is in the house of Mullah Shah. 39. Allah reveals the souls on the heavens. Every soul appropriately depends on every human. I have been given the name of the Shah and bestowed me with the Shahi, royal wealth, so that my name would be Ismbar Muzama, in which his quality is also reflected. 40. I am not interested in the world and its illusion. I am pious without anything, and I do not keep anything. I speak the truth and do not lie. Oh, my relatives and companion, I keep the things that carry me to the right path. 41. O one who has done the elemental tranquility and blessings, sending down the zikr and hard work. O Shah, you see the sky, earth, Jannat, heaven, and hell with a glimpse of an eye. O Shah, there is no doubt in it that you are among the knowledgeable people. In the ground of Tawheed you are brave. Today your friends are bravest among the braver people. This is a fact that you are the king of men. 42. O Shah, you dwell in the hearts of people. Your home will always be our dwelling. You are the master of cultivating the farm of the heart. Therefore, You should be called Al-Fatiha. Whoever sees the face of the moon, he will be free from the darkness. Whoever sees the face of the moon, he will see the beautiful face of the moon in his same direction. 43. It is true that whoever sees the face of Shah, he will see the face of Allah wherever he looks. My Shah Sahab speaks more wisely, which is difficult to comprehend, because of his status of love and perfection within himself. Those who have actually known about the wisdom of spirit, and their hearts have been filled with the sweetness of reality, then they can understand the words of my master. 44. A group who can see and understand it, but according to their belief and perception, they deny it, and remain reckless from the right path of my master. As my master speaks about that group, those people who do not behave me with kindness, they all disagree with my work. They are all followers of the Prophet's Sharia, but they are enemy of his tariq, deep, mystical observance. 45. Master is the defender of the world, and the most knowledgeable person at this time. He converts the existence of his companion from the copper to the gold like elixir. Today, the world only exists because of these fortunate companions. Those are the fortunate and blessed that come under the list of the companions of my master. They have surrendered to the master. 46. So, they have accepted the master as their leader in the world, as well as in the religion. It is difficult to do the upbringing and education of these companions like my master is doing. Otherwise, in order to do this sort of treatment, it requires spirituality and strength, and it can hardly be achieved in years upon years. 47. My master also states about it. It is not easier for everyone to guide the students, and not every pearl is beautiful, and not every glittering gravel is red. Other than that, he has also stated that my prayer has never been qaza, and Allah has not given me any sort of disease that would be a cause of leaving my prayer. I have always offered prayers on the time and still doing that. 48. He is very cautious to offer congregational prayer. Mullah Muhammad Said, who is a specific companion of my master, whenever he would be there, then master does not order any other to lead the imam prayers. If he would not be there, then the master leads the congregational prayer. Hazrat Mullah Shah, my master, is a strict follower of Sharia. 49. He states that there is not any divine manifestation of Shariat. So, it is better for a Muslim that what he is apparently doing must comply with the manifestation of the Islamic law, and he must adorn his divine life according to Islamic law, which is a reality. 50. My Shah further states that usually a few scholars whose mind could not reach out the smell of marfat and the way of reality, hakikat, they taunt and disagree with me. When I tell them that if any act of mine does not comply with Islamic law, or even it is contrary to the law, then let me know so that I can be aware of it. Their faith is only consisted of doubts, that's why they could not bring up any pieces of evidence on their point. 51. My Shah does not accept any gift from worldly people, and especially from sultans and kings. But if he accepts, then it would be only 1 or 2 rupees. Every companion is ready to sacrifice his life for the master, then what is worth of wealth? Even after getting these gifts, he spends on others. Nowadays 1 or 2 companions live in his service, but he did not have such companions when he was young. 52. Sometimes, he also sits beneath the moonlight and sometimes in the unlit room. He prevents the gathering of the people who are fond of worldly desires. Whenever a person comes into the gathering of the master, he asks a few questions from them for the sake of introduction, such as, "What is your name? Where are you from?" After that, he says goodbye to the person. 53. But master's companions and followers are always ready to serve the guests. There is nothing more to say about the Shah Sahab than that he is always observing the existence of immortal Prophet Muhammad and his teachings. There is not any moment where he does not do this, such as while eating, sitting, and drinking. Therefore, he is always happy, flourishing, and a natural leader. 54. In his method of spirituality, there is no restriction and tastelessness. Sometimes in the excitement, he starts to laugh loudly. By following the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad, he does converse with his companions. Though, he is always busy in the observance of the immortal, so that his laughing is also marfat and tawheed. 55. This is what the Master said, that Allah is within himself, and this is the concept of wahdat al-wujud. It means that Allah and his creation are the same. This is also the last state of spirituality, which is the state of lahut. Allah also states in Surah Baqarah, that wherever you see there will be a face of Allah. As Master Rumi stated, that Allah is a reflection of us. 56. He is always busy in meditation. Tiredness and laziness are more obvious on such a person, but his face and illuminating forehead do not show that. My Shah's way of doing the ablution is that he takes the water to carry out the wuzu, ablution. It happens often that a companion pours the water in the hands of my master to carry out the ablution. 57. He wears simple clothes. He wears a turban with white color. Beneath the turban, he wears the hat. He does not like colorful turban. In the summer season, he often wears the hat on the head, and sometimes he wears a headscarf above the hat. The breeze of Kashmir is cold. So, he wears soft clothes. Hazrat Sahab's kitchen has never been used for cooking. 58. His companions and devotees bring the food in honor of the Master. He takes his part from it. If any follower of the Master desires to cook for the Master, and invites him for the meal at his home, then my Shah follows the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad by accepting the invitation. Whatever there will be presented to eat, he eats it. He also eats with his friends. Once a day, but often twice a day they eat. 59. If there would not be available anything to eat, then he can survive 3 days without eating and drinking. Master often goes to visit the jungle and rivers. River Jhelum of Kashmir is surrounded by beautiful greenery and a fresh breeze. Therefore, it keeps the coolness and enjoyment to be there. In order to see the creation of Allah, and for the purpose of excursion, he also goes to the outskirts of the city. 60. After spending a few days there, then he returns back to his city. Sometimes he does horse riding. However, he travels without any means of transport. In this city, most of the people travel through boats, that's why my master also travels on the boat. There are so many miracles of my master with their ways to achieve it. If anyone wants to write it, then a book would be compiled. 61. However, my master does not like that these things should be written, and he also refrains us to write about them. For him, a tiny miracle is that whatever is in the heart of the questioner, he, the master, becomes aware of it with an instant sight. 62. If alchemy can change dust into gold, thou art a marvel. But asceticism is an alchemy that changes dust into God. If a man dives into the ocean of deity, what does he become? As a drop which falls from the clouds into the sea. So says Mullah Shah. 63, 64 and 65. A brief sketch of Jahanara Begum. She is perhaps the most remarkable woman of the Mughal dynasty. Jahanara Begum, born in 1614 and died in 1681, was the elder sister to her brother Dara Shikoh, and the eldest child of Mumtaz Mahal and the renowned emperor, Shah Jahan. Jahanara was deeply devoted to her father, and to her brother, Dara, with whom she shared a deep spiritual bond. Following Dara's lead, she became a follower of the Sufi mystic, Mullah Shah, who was himself a disciple of the famed sage, Mian Mir. Jahanara was considered to be Mullah Shah's most advanced disciple, and would have been his successor, if women were allowed to occupy such an exalted position. Jahanara was also extraordinarily gifted, and was responsible for sponsoring the building of the Jami Masjid Mosque, and designed the iconic Chandni Chowk Bazaar. In addition, she was highly educated, and wrote an exquisite history of the Kishti Sufi order in Persian. She was extremely generous, and spent enormous sums helping the poor and the needy. Her life, however, was filled with tragedies that she valiantly endured, including being almost burnt alive when her dress accidentally caught on fire. Fortunately, she survived after a long recovery, and having endured burns on her body and suffering excruciating pain. Jahanara was very loyal to her father and stayed with him for years during his exile in the Agra fort, after one of his sons, and future successor, Aurangzeb, had him arrested and imprisoned. Jahanara was a great advocate of Sufi spiritual practices, and was taught by Mullah Shah how to meditate by breath restraint, focusing on the inner heart, repeating the sacred names of Allah, and listening to the inner sound current. Near the end of her life she designed her own burial tomb, which was remarkable for its simple beauty and elegance. It is composed of white marble, and is located in New Delhi. 66. There is a beautiful inscription in Persian that adorns the outside of her tomb, inside the Hazrat Nizamuddin Dargah complex, which reveals the essence of her spirit. Allah is the living, the sustaining. Let no one cover my grave except with greenery, for this very grass suffices as a tomb cover for the poor. The mortal, simplistic, Princess Jahanara, disciple of the Khwaja Moinuddin Kishti, daughter of Shah Jahan, the conqueror. May Allah illuminate his proof. Mullah Shah is a remarkable one. Not only was he a Sufi mystic who was widely and deeply respected, but he lived at a very pivotal time in history where he witnessed the reign of Shah Jahan, who commissioned and oversaw the building of the exquisite Taj Mahal, and that of his notorious younger son, Aurangzeb, who would eventually kill his brothers and imprison his own father in order to secure his place as the sole emperor of the Mughal dynasty. Yet, despite these political turmoils, Mullah Shah taught a spiritual path that transcended sectarian borders. He attracted the devotion of two of Shah Jahan's favorite children, Dara Shikoh and Fatima Jahanara. Both were exceptionally devoted to the wise sage, and Mullah Shah's life appears to have been spared, due to the intercession of both Dara Shikoh and his sister Jahanara, who would eventually write a Persian biography of her spiritual teacher. It is of interest to note that Mullah Shah advocated the meditative practice of Nod or Shabad Yoga, which he called Sultan ul Azkar, the loftiest of spiritual disciplines. Mullah Shah was born AD 1584, in the village of Urksa in Badakhshan, a mountainous and inaccessible country to the north of the Indian Caucasus. His family, which was of Mongol origin, held a certain position, and his grandfather had been judge of the village. At the age of 21, the young man quitted his relatives and his country, and went back to Balkh, then a center of learning in Central Asia. He made great progress there, especially in the knowledge of Arabic. After some time he left Balkh, and turning his steps southward, arrived at Kashmir, where he continued his studies, but an irresistible thirst after truth made him feel the necessity of seeking a spiritual guide, and he resolved to go to Lahore, where there lived a celebrated saint, Sheikh Mian Mir. The reception he met with was not favorable. Mian Mir at first repulsed him, but allowed himself at last to be overcome by the perseverance of the young man, and taught him Sufi exercises according to the rule of the Qadiri order of dervishes. The stifling heat of Lahore did not suit the health of Mullah Shah, who accordingly resolved to spend the summers in Kashmir, returning to Lahore for the winter. He led this life for several years, till he had passed through all the stages of asceticism, but his spiritual guide would not lead him to the supreme goal of mystical science, which is termed union with God, or knowledge of oneself. Mian Mir only spoke to him of it in an enigmatic way and said, "Do not cease to study thyself and thine own heart, for thy goal is in thyself." In the year 1636 AD, he returned again, as usual, from Lahore to Kashmir, and practiced his austerities without relaxation. When one day, by the special favor of the divinity, and without the assistance of any spiritual preceptor, the desired image revealed itself to him. By this expression is understood, in mystic phraseology, union with God, and the conception of absolute being, which is equivalent to the knowledge of oneself. When Mullah Shah thus attained the goal of his mystical aspirations, he was in his 47th year, and had been engaged 27 years in the spiritual exercises of the Sufis. When he returned to Lahore, he informed his spiritual guide that he had attained union with God. The latter advised him not to divulge the fact, and not to give up his ascetic practices. In Kashmir, Mullah Shah had collected round him a little circle of devoted disciples. The strong emotional condition into which Mullah Shah's new spiritual experience had brought him did not prevent him from doing his best not to offend against the religious law, and he was in the habit of saying to his friends, "Whoso does not respect the precepts of the religious law is not one of us." Mullah Shah had always been of a retiring disposition, but in his present mood he carried his self-isolation so far that he closed the door of his house and only received his intimates at fixed times. When he dropped his habitual reserve, the spiritual power of Mullah Shah became so great that every novice whom he caused to sit in front of him and to concentrate his mental faculties on his own heart, became clairvoyant to such a degree that his internal senses were unfolded, and the unseen world appeared to him. Mullah Shah expressed himself in very bold terms regarding the manner with which he conceived God and his relation to humanity. In one of his poems he says, "The sage who knows himself has become God, be sure of that, my friend." In another poem, which caused a temporary estrangement between himself and the Sheikh Mian Mir, he said, "My heart by 1,000 tongues cries to me, I am God. What reproach of heresy can they bring against me that this utterance comes to my lips?" Those who had attained union with God used to say, "I am absolute being. But I only say what I have heard from the mouth of Sheikh Mian Mir." In the meantime, the number of his adherents daily increased, persons of all classes in society became his adherents, even women became capable of mystical intuitions by the effect of his prayers and without having seen him. However, the increasing number of those who wished to approach him commenced to be inconvenient, and he said, "I am not a sheikh of dervishes who receives novices and builds convents. Neither the mosque nor the dervish convent attract me, but the purity of the desert and the freedom of the open country." In the year 1634 AD, a certain Mir Baki, a descendant of the Prophet, attached himself to Mullah Shah, and experienced in a short time ecstatic states. He then preached the doctrine of union with God without any reserve. At the same time he claimed to be free from the precepts of the religious law. The following lines were composed by him. "Why should my hand let go this sparkling cup of my soul? I already realize the aspirations of tomorrow. which lines, rendered into prose, seem to mean, "Why should I pass my life sadly on in self-maceration and austerity? I prefer to anticipate now the delights which they speak of as belonging to the future life." This is Epicureanism, pure and simple, such as we find it in the Odes of Hafiz and the quatrains of Omar Khayyam. When Mullah Shah heard of these extravagant utterances, he caused Mir Baki to be expelled from the town. At the same time, the doctrines of Mullah Shah regarding union with God began to make a great deal of sensation, and a large number of influential men who belonged to the Conservative Party raised against him the accusation of heresy without really understanding his teaching. They quoted some of his verses against him, and said, "Mullah Shah is beginning to imitate Manza Helaj. He should be brought to trial and sentenced to death." They unanimously drew up an indictment against him and affixed their seals. A large number of religious functionaries joined them, and they submitted their petition to the Emperor Shah Jahan, requesting him to pronounce sentence of death against Mullah Shah. The emperor consented, and dispatched a firman to that effect to Zafar Khan, governor of Kashmir. Shah Jahan's son, the Prince Dara Shikoh, had been absent, and only learned what had happened when he returned. He immediately went to his father and represented to him that Mullah Shah was a pupil of Sheikh Mian Mir, a man renowned for piety, and that the emperor ought, before pronouncing final judgment, to ask the latter regarding the conduct of his former disciple. The prince concluded by saying that in such a matter haste was ill-omened, because to deprive a man of life is to pull down a building of which God is the architect. The emperor accepted this appeal graciously, and ordered the execution to be deferred. Meanwhile, the news of the condemnation of Mullah Shah had spread and reached Kashmir, but the respite obtained by the prince was still unknown there. The friends of Mullah Shah were in despair, and used their utmost endeavors to persuade him to fly. But he answered, "I am not an impostor that I should seek safety in flight. I am an utterer of truth. Death and life are to me alike. Let my blood in another life also redden the impaling stake. I am living and eternal, death recoils from me, for my knowledge has vanquished death. The sphere where all colors are effaced has become my abode. Once," he added, "I used to bar the door of my house with a bolt in order not to be disturbed by anyone, but now I will leave it wide open, in order that whoever wishes to make me a martyr may enter at his pleasure." Mian Mir told him that Mullah Shah was apt to be carried out of himself when in an ecstatic state, and that then he sometimes spoke without observing the reserve necessary on the doctrine of union with God, but he adjured the emperor at the same time to take no steps against his old pupil, for, he said, "This holy man is a consuming fire, and woe to you if he be irritated, for he could destroy the world. In any case prevent the orthodox party from persecuting him, otherwise some dreadful disaster may happen." This advice made a deep impression on the emperor, who thanked Prince Dara Shikoh for having prevented his carrying out the sentence of death. He said, "These theologians have tried to persuade me to kill a visionary dervish. I thank thee, my son, for having prevented my committing an act of injustice." Some time afterwards the emperor went to Kashmir, but he did not see Mullah Shah, who had become so fond of solitude that he rarely showed himself in the city. In 1635 AD, the Sheikh Mian Mir died at Lahore, and in the same year one of the chief nobles of the court named Najat Khan became a disciple of Mullah Shah. About the same time, Mozaffar Beg, one of the emperor's suite, devoted himself to his service, and his example was followed by several of his friends. But no sooner had they been initiated into the mystical doctrines than they believed themselves privileged to dispense with the prescribed fast of Ramazan and the obligatory prayers. Considering that the religious law no longer applied to them. Being informed of these irregularities, Mullah Shah prayed the governor to have them removed from the town. About this time he made a collection of his verses, among which are the following: If alchemy can change dust into gold, thou marvelest, but asceticism is an alchemy which changes dust into God. If a man dives into the ocean of deity, what does he become? As a drop which falls from the clouds into the sea. Regarding pedantic theologians, he says, "Well, I know these preachers who do not practice, their memory stored with 100,000 traditions, while their mind is empty of ideas." In 1639 the Emperor Shah Jahan came a second time to Kashmir, and took up his dwelling in the park called Zafarabad, in a pavilion which commanded a delightful view of the lake. No sooner had he arrived than he sent for Mullah Shah, who came without delay. The emperor received him with marked kindness and conversed long with him on subjects relating to the Sufi sciences. This same year is remarkable for an event which had important results for Mullah Shah and his followers. The Prince Dara Shikoh, who had saved Mullah Shah's life by his intervention, had always been marked by keen religious feeling, and often spent whole nights in prayer and meditation. He had often heard of the extraordinary powers of Mullah Shah, but had never had the opportunity of seeing him, as the sheikh still maintained his habits of retirement. Little by little, a feeling of irresistible curiosity took possession of the prince. He determined to see the holy man who was so highly spoken of, and one night, accompanied by a single servant named Mujahid, he left his palace and directed his steps towards the dwelling of Mullah Shah. The latter had in his courtyard an ancient plane tree, and was in the habit of sitting at the foot of it during the night, lost in meditation. Having arrived at the house, the prince ordered his servant to wait near the door, and entered the courtyard alone. Seeing the sheikh seated at the foot of the tree, he stopped and remained standing till the master should speak to him. The latter knew very well who the newcomer was, and that little persuasion was needed to make him one of his disciples, but he made as though he did not see him. A long time passed thus, till the sheikh broke the silence by asking the prince, "Who art thou?" The prince did not speak. Mullah Shah then said again, "Why dost thou not answer? Speak, and tell thy name." The prince, filled with embarrassment, replied, "My name is Dara Shikoh." "Who is thy father?" "The Emperor Shah Jahan." "Why hast thou come to see me?" "Because I feel drawn towards God, and seek for a spiritual guide." On this Mullah Shah exclaimed sharply, "What are emperors and princes to me? Know that I am a man devoted to asceticism. Is this hour of the night the time to come and trouble me? Go, and do not show thyself here a second time." Deeply wounded by this reception, the prince withdrew and re-entered his palace, where he spent the whole night weeping. But in spite of all his disappointment, he felt himself drawn the next night by an irresistible attraction towards the saint's dwelling, but the latter this time did not even condescend to speak to him. Mujahid, the servant who accompanied the prince, became angry, and said to his master, "What miracles has this crabbed dervish shown you that you should come here every night and expose yourself to such indignities? Ordinary dervishes are cheerful folk, not uncivil and morose like this old man. For my own part, I set no great store by this asceticism, and the only thing that makes me uneasy is your putting faith in it." The prince answered, "If Mullah Shah was an impostor, so far from treating me as he has done, he would, on the contrary, have prayed God to bring me to him. It is precisely his independent spirit and irritated manner which proves him to be an extraordinary man." That same night when Mujahid returned home, he was seized by fever and carried off in a few hours. Dara Shikoh, when informed of this terrible event, was profoundly moved. He reproached himself bitterly for not having at once punished his servant's insolence, and considered the death of Mujahid as a divine punishment which menaced him also. He immediately sent for the Qazi Afzal, one of his most devoted friends, and told him of his anxiety. The latter was a friend of Akand Mullah Muhammad Sindh, a disciple of Mullah Shah, and at his instance the sheikh consented to see the prince. Dara Shikoh could not pay his visit during the day, from fear of arousing public curiosity, but as soon as night fell, he presented himself before the sheikh, whom this time he found seated in his cell. Before crossing the threshold, the prince saluted the holy man with profound respect, and the latter bade him enter and be seated. The cell was lighted by a single lamp, whose wick was smoking. In his eager desire to discern the venerable features of the sheikh, the prince dressed the wick with his own fingers. This simple action gained him the sheikh's affection. At the end of some days he bade him to blindfold himself, then he concentrated his attention upon him in such a way that the invisible world was revealed to the view of the prince, who felt his heart filled with joy. Dara Shikoh had a sister, the Princess Fatima, to whom he was deeply attached. As soon as he had become a disciple of Mullah Shah and his heart had been open to the intuition of the spiritual world, he hastened to inform his sister. This news made such an impression on the mind of the princess that she wrote to the sheikh several letters full of humility and devotion. He read them all, but made no reply for more than a month, till he was convinced that Fatima was animated by an invincible resolution. At last he accorded his sympathy to her also, and admitted her to the circle of the initiates. The princess persevered ardently in these mystical studies, and received the instructions of her spiritual guide by correspondence. She attained to such perfection that she arrived at intuitive knowledge of God and union with him. Although the sheikh was full of affection for all his disciples, he had a particular regard for her, and was in the habit of saying that she had attained to such an extraordinary degree of knowledge that she was fit to be his successor. Mullah Shah was now old and infirm. He had passed several winters at Lahore, surrounded by the care and attention of his friends and pupils. In the year 1655 AD, the emperor wrote to him to invite him to pass the winter with him at Shah Jahanabad, his ordinary residence, but the sheikh was beginning to suffer from weakness of the eyes, and did not feel strong enough to undertake the journey. For some years he remained in Kashmir, and would often say, "The theosophist ought to profit by length of life. My life is approaching its end, let us then enjoy our stay in Kashmir, and not leave it." In AD 1658 Aurangzeb, Dara Shikoh's younger brother, seized on the person of his father the Emperor Shah Jahan, whom he kept in confinement for the rest of his life, and had Dara assassinated in prison. Aurangzeb was a bigoted Mohammedan, and his accession to the throne threatened to have serious consequences for Mullah Shah. As soon as he had assumed the reins of government, the clerical party began to represent to him that Mullah Shah taught doctrines contrary to revealed religion. There were not wanting witnesses on the other side, but the emperor, on hearing the complaints against Mullah Shah, sent an order to the governor of Kashmir to send him to the capital. The governor pleaded for a delay on account of Mullah Shah's advanced age and weakness till he was strong enough to make the journey. A year thus passed by. Some verses which Mullah Shah composed in honor of Aurangzeb made a favorable impression on the emperor, and the Princess Fatima having interceded on behalf of her old teacher, Aurangzeb revoked his first order, and merely enjoined him to take up his residence at Lahore as soon as possible. It was not till 1660 AD that Mullah Shah could obey this order. He left Kashmir at the beginning of winter and came to Lahore, where he continued to live a retired life, only granting interviews to a few chosen disciples. But when from time to time he had an access of mystical emotion, he would speak of union with God without any reserve, in a loud voice, and without noticing who was present. One of his friends said to him one day, "We live in a strange time, and people are disquieted by your discourses on this matter. It would be more prudent to expound your doctrines with a little more reserve." The sheikh answered him, "Up to the present I have never been afraid for my life. Books containing such doctrine are known to all, and everyone has read them. What precautions, then, at my time of life, ought I to observe?" I cannot abandon or change my habits of thinking and speaking now. Some of his other sayings reported at this time show that he had already a presentiment of his approaching death. Kabul Khan, one of his friends, said to him one day, "Formerly our sovereign Aurangzeb loved to listen to discourses on the subject of mysticism, and I have often had the honor of reading before him passages from the Masnavi of Jalaluddin Rumi. The emperor was often so touched by them that he shed tears. Certainly when he comes to Lahore he will wish to see you." "No," replied Mullah Shah, "we shall never see him. The night is great with child, see what it will bring forth." In 1661 he had an attack of fever which lasted about 15 days. That year fever became epidemic at Lahore, and on the 11th of the month of Safar, Mullah Shah had another attack, which carried him off on the night of the 15th of the same month. He was buried in a plot of ground which he had already acquired for the purpose. The Princess Fatima bought the surrounding land, and erected a shrine of red stone over his tomb. The foregoing sketch of Mullah Shah gives a general view of Oriental spiritualism as it prevailed 2.5 centuries ago over a great part of Asia. The first point worthy of notice in it is the immense popularity of mystical ideas at that time, and the wide influence which they exercised over all minds. Round Mullah Shah gathered persons of every condition, poor peasants as well as princes were seized with the same enthusiasm for his doctrines. The same ascetic training produced the same results in the most varying temperaments. The master seems to have exercised a kind of magnetic influence over his neophytes. He fixes his gaze upon them for a longer or shorter time, till their inward senses open and render them capable of seeing the wonders of the spiritual world. All the accounts are unanimous in this respect, and they carry such a stamp of sincerity that their veracity is indisputable. The biography of Mullah Shah also throws a great deal of light on the fundamental ideas of Oriental mysticism. They spring from a pantheistic philosophy in many respects, startlingly resembling those of modern times. Mullah Shah often insists that individual existence counts for nothing, and that nothing in reality exists outside of God, the absolute being. Every particular life dissolves in this universal unity. Life and death are mere changes in the form of existence.